Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another playoff preview show here at the Hockey Writers. We're getting down to it. We're down to four teams. Well, as we record this, not yet. But once the Seattle Kraken and the Dallas Stars finish their series, we'll be down to the final four. And I've got two teams that are in it, Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes. Brandon Stanley, Carolina Hurricanes, Joey Ganzi, the Florida Panthers. We've seen them a lot up to now. And one of you, unfortunately, will be out in our next preview, but it's going to be an interesting series. So how's it going, guys?
Going fantastic. Yeah. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Ready for the series to get started. We're waiting forever here.
Yeah, right. Well, both teams. Yeah, and both teams finished off their series pretty quickly. So they've been sitting around. Well, they will be sitting around for a bit. The Florida Panthers took out the Toronto Maple Leafs in 5 games. Carolina Hurricanes took out the New Jersey Devils in, I believe it was 5 games as well, right? So, pretty quick series when everyone kind of thought, I think we thought we're going to go 6-7 games. They didn't. They were ended up pretty quickly, and now they're here. So, just going through, I'll start with you, Brandon. What'd you see from that series against the Devils? I mean, I say it was pretty quick. Were you surprised by how quick it went? And what did you take away from that series?
Well, if you recall, I'll go ahead and take my punishment. But I said I thought the Devils were going to win that series. I figured it was going to go a while, but I didn't think the Hurricanes were going to be able to keep up. A lot of things I overlooked, and in retrospect, I'm kind of regretting, but it played out how the Hurricanes want a series to play out. They were extremely structurally efficient, especially through the neutral zone, through the center of the ice. They completely choked off. And outside of game 3, they really struggled. In game 3, gave up 8 goals. But other than that, the Hurricanes dominated that series. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't like they were just, eking out wins. Game 5, yeah, that was the one really good game we got in that series. Game 5 to close it out. It was a very back and forth close affair. But other than that, the Hurricanes, just like I said, completely shut off any attempts the Devils had to build speed through the middle of the ice. And that's where their strength is. Their skill players like Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, so on. So it's gonna be really interesting to watch a totally different kind of series here with the Florida Panthers. Kind of lines more up with, I think, their first series against the Islanders in terms of stylistic play. But Hurricanes are riding high right now for sure. Have a lot of confidence in that group.
Yeah, for sure. And they're getting by without a few key players, like we mentioned from the beginning. And some of the other guys have stepped up and come to play. So that's an interesting development of how they've been able to get through that. Joey, again, the Florida Panthers came into that series against the Maple Leafs as the underdog. Everyone kind of thought the Maple Leafs are going to win that series, but ended up being pretty quick, 5 games. So what'd you think about that series and any takeaways from it?
I've never been so happy to be wrong in my life. I actually had the Leafs winning in 6 that time, but this team has fully bought into Paul Maurice's system. They're playing with a ton of confidence. They're out there having fun. They're playing like Brandon's Canes. They've been playing very efficiently. Mm-hmm. They're getting pucks to the net. They're using their forecheck to just absolutely dominate anyone that comes in their way. And what I've noticed is throughout the entire Maple Leaf series, the Leafs themselves were not necessarily making mistakes. They were forced into mistakes. If that makes any sense. I saw constant turnovers within their own neutral zone or their own offensive blue line, and and in the grand scheme of things, it resulted in them losing the series. And I expect a couple firings from their front office and maybe even their head coach.
Yeah, well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on in Maple Leafs land right now. So it was an interesting series. Like I said, I thought it was going to be a lot longer, and but it ended up being the Bobrovsky show for the most part, and we'll talk about him. Let's start with that. Well, that's a good segue. Let's start with the players to watch in this series. We'll start with you, Joey. Like I said, Bobrovsky was the main player to watch in that series against the Maple Leafs. He pretty much shut them down. He didn't allow more than 2 goals in every game. So, the Maple Leafs couldn't score on him, for one. And he played like the Rock that he should be, getting paid $10 million. So is he the guy you're looking at in this series, or you have some other guys that you're kind of watching?
Of course, I'm looking at Bobrovsky because he's in playoff mode right now. He has 7 wins through 10 playoff games and a .918 save percentage. This ever since he came in, I believe it was I forget if it was game 3 or game 4. I apologize. But ever since he came in, he's been an absolute rock. He finally got his head straightened out. I know he had an injury just before the start of the playoffs, but he's been a guy they've been relying on night in, night out. When it seems like the entire defense is just gassed or there's a breakaway, he finds a way to make a save. Perfect example was game 5 against Boston, where he made that breakaway save right at the buzzer. And ever since that's happened, he's been riding that high wave. But another player I want to take a look at is, we didn't really say his name too much last series. I'm going to say Matthew Tkachuk, because I don't know if he got any points or not. I think he got 1 assist or 2 in game 1, but he did do a lot to drive the play. He was pretty much left off the score sheet through 5 games. And I know a lot of Calgary fans and even Edmonton fans said he kind of disappears in the postseason, but you look at his first round series against Boston, and that completely erases that narrative. I think they're just finding ways to win without their top stars, but I am looking for Matthew Tkachuk to step up and be the player he was signed for. And he has been in the first series, but I think he's going to probably do a lot more in this series.
Yeah, and I mean, Carter Verhaeghe really stepped up against Toronto. I mean, he was a pretty big part of that series. Sam Bennett and, Anthony Duclair, that whole line was pretty good. Even though, like you said, Tkachuk didn't get a lot of points, but he was still noticeable, I'd say, even throughout that series. So he's going to be interesting to watch what he can do against the Hurricanes, because, like I say, the Hurricanes play a really good structured system too, and we'll see how much kind of comes out of it. Brandon, over to you. That series against the Devils, there was quite a bit of contributions from all over the lineup. Seth Jarvis continues to be he's just going to be a revelation for me. I mean, seems to be such a good player. He's playing well. Yeah. Yeah.
He's a little kid, but big compete level. I love watching him. Playoffs, he always shines.
So are you watching for him? Who else are you watching in this? Sebastian Aho again was good again. Who else are you kind of watching?
We got a lot. And I mean, it's kind of hard to answer this question because of the Hurricanes buy-in in their system. It literally can be anybody, any night. Jordan Martinook had 10 points against the Devils in 5 games. Jordan Martinook.
Yeah.
10 points in 5 games. Jesper Foss has been big time and time again. We talked about Martin Necas before the last series, said that series set up a little bit better for him because the Devils want to play a little bit more open, air it out kind of game, and he had 3 goals in 5 games. He stepped up. But the guy I'm really watching for, this was an easy pick for me, is the guy that's coming back from injury reportedly in Teuvo Teravainen. The Hurricanes are getting him back for the first time since I think it was game 2 of round 1. He took that slash on the hand from Jean-Gabriel Pageau and hasn't played in almost a month now. So the Hurricanes are getting him back. We know what kind of chemistry he has with his countryman, Sebastian Aho. If he can come back and give the Hurricanes the type of lift Teuvo Teravainen is capable of giving them, that's going to be a huge, huge boost to this Hurricanes team. Even though they are creating a lot of offense right now, getting back a player as skilled as Teravainen is would be really big. He hasn't had the best year, even when he was healthy. He's fought through multiple injuries this year, and kind of every time he seems to be getting into a rhythm, something else happens. He hasn't missed a ton of time until this playoff, missing a month. I think that's the biggest chunk he's actually missed. But it just seemed like he never really was at his best offensively. But he's also one of the most underrated defensive wingers in the entire league. I don't think people really talk about that with Teravainen all that much. Elite penalty killer, just great in his own end. So many smart, savvy plays. It's a big part of what they do in that. And so getting him back is going to be big either way. But I think if he can, be that big time playmaker too and help out on the power play a little bit on top of that, it's going to be a huge addition for the Hurricanes.
Another guy I'm kind of seeing, Jesperi Kotkaniemi was really good against the Devils too. I think he had one game he had a couple goals. Looks really good for where he plays. I mean, I don't think he plays a lot. I mean, he usually is in that middle 6, maybe a lot of the time. So yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think they just have so many guys that can, like you said, step up at different times. And it looks like, I mean, even the Florida Panthers, they've got quite a few guys that just keep So, I mean, this series is gonna be interesting. So let's move on to some keys to victory for each team. We'll stay with you, Brandon, on this. What are some keys to victory for the Hurricanes to come out of this and go to the Stanley Cup final?
The two big things for me. One, what do you get from Frederik Andersen? He obviously was sensational against the Devils. Obviously, the entire team stunk in that game 3 loss. Nobody played well. Andersen was included in that. Couple of really bad goals, and then Kochetkov goes in. He allows a couple bad goals, but in the Hurricanes' 4 wins, he stopped 93 out of 98 shots over the Devils. We know how good that offense is. Big save after big save. That's a 949 save percentage, by the way. So if he can continue to play at that level and go toe to toe with Bob, I like the Hurricanes' chances. The other thing, speaking of Bobrovsky, he is very locked in right now. And I almost think the way the Hurricanes create their offense is kind of built to kind of throw some water on that fire of a hot goalie. Because you look at Akira Schmid, yeah, I know him and Bob are definitely not two guys you can really compare, a rookie and a longtime former Vezina winner, longtime veteran. But the way the Hurricanes create, they make things difficult on the goalies. They get in tight, they fight for rebounds, they win battles at the front of the net, they get deflections. They've gotten a ton of tip goals this postseason. Those are the kind of things you have to do to beat a hot goalie. You're not going to make tic-tac-toe passes and beat him with snipe from the dead slot very often. Bobrovsky's you're not going to beat him like that. So if they continue to get to the front of the net, win battles there, admittedly not the easiest thing against a pretty big, brawny Florida Panthers defense. But if they continue to do that, I think they'll find success.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like with the Maple Leafs, they didn't do a lot of that against Bobrovsky. They didn't really challenge him too much, I don't think. But he was good when they did get there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Bobrovsky kind of adjusts to that, and even the team in front of him does as well. All right, Joey, over to you. How are the Panthers going to win this series? I mean, against the Maple Leafs, against the Bruins, their forecheck, their ability to create turnovers was their MO. Are they going to be able to do that against the Hurricanes?
It seems difficult on paper, but I do believe they can get it done. Paul Maurice has coached this Carolina Hurricanes team for a very long time, so he should have, I guess for lack of better words, an insider information on them. But it's really going to come down to just shutting down their forwards. Their forwards are insane. You even say yourself, Jordan Martinook, 10 points in 5 games. Are you kidding me? Sebastian Aho's constantly making noise. Teuvo Teravainen coming back in the lineup. He's obviously going to do something for his squad. Martin Necas, and of course, the one player I'm surprised we didn't talk about at all, the captain, Jordan Staal. He's probably really eager to go against both his brothers, so he's probably going to have a chip on his shoulder so that he doesn't have to hear about, I don't know, at Thanksgiving dinner how we beat them or something. I don't know.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah, I haven't brought it up yet. There's a stall ball here.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's going to come down to if the Panthers can keep their forecheck and don't mind getting dirty. Because you have a lot of players that are very, very tall. And even going back to Carolina's defense with Brent Burns, they can play physical, but at the same time, their defense can step up into the rush and make chances themselves. And Frederik Andersen, I'm not going to steer away from him. He hasn't been – he's been great, but his injury history is a bit of a concern for me. But if they find a way to get past him, it's going to be an easy series for Florida.
And it's good to know, too, Bobrovsky hasn't played against the Hurricanes this season. So, it's been Spencer Knight and Alex Lyon throughout the season. So Bobrovsky doesn't even have any book, I guess, on any of the, he's played against the Hurricanes in his career, but, and it's funny, he's a 13-13. He has a 500 record against them in his career, and not a bad, 929 save percentage, I believe it was. So, 923
249 GAA.
239, yeah. So 239 goals against average, 2 shutouts. Obviously, those 27 games are spread out probably when he was with the Blue Jackets as well. But it's interesting to look at those stats. There, he's 500 against them. So and not bad stats overall, even though he is 500. So All right, I love doing this, X factors, and I call this a Fernando Pisani type players that you don't expect to do a lot, but they all of a sudden just come alive in the playoffs. So start with you, Joey. Do you have any X factors for this series?
I said before, and I'll say it again, he was a pest in the Maple Leaf series and the Bruins series. I'm going to say Sam Bennett. He's always been that playoff type player. Every single time he hits the ice, he doesn't mind getting dirty. He doesn't mind establishing a forecheck, and he's not afraid to shoot the puck sometimes. And he doesn't also mind getting tricky. He almost tried to go between the legs against in Game 3. Unfortunately, didn't work out. But that guy is playing with a ton of confidence since he's gone back from injury. I think he's going to be a huge piece if Florida wants to get to the Cup final for the first time since 1996.
Yeah, Sam Bennett is I remember him when he was a rookie against the Canucks, and the last time the Canucks were in the playoffs. That runs into the bubble. That's how long ago it was. Yeah, Sam Bennett was annoying in that series, so he's just continued to grow into that type of role in the NHL. All right, Brandon, who do you got from the Hurricanes? I mean, there's a lot of different guys, like I said, just steps up at different times. So who do you have doing that in this series?
Shane Gostisbehere. So I think, Burns would have been an easy answer too, but that's because Burns is going to do what he always does. He's going to be a big work. He needs to get it back to the point, get shots through traffic. That's how they kind of have success anyway. It's going to be even more important to get to Bobrovsky, especially if you get that traffic in front. That's how you're going to score some goals on him, get some ugly ones. But Burns can't be the only guy. You had Brady Shea, 18 goals in the regular season as well. Hasn't had the best postseason so far in either end. He's kind of been victimized a couple of times defensively, and we're not really used to seeing that out of him and Brett Pesce. It's normally such a sound defensive second pairing. But I think I went with him in the first round too, so I didn't want to go. You got to get some of those guys involved in the offense. They're going to be big, and again, getting shots through. That's going to be a big thing for the series. Get those on net. Try to get some dirty goals on Bobrovsky.
Yeah. Look, as of course, as a fan, I don't want to see him score too much on us, but it'll be nice to see a local Pembroke Pines kid. I believe it was Pembroke Pines. Yeah, Pembroke Pines kid. Yeah, he's right. He's from the 954. You want to see him do well against anyone, at least from my perspective.
He's been really good as a Hurricane. It was such a good, under the radar pickup. And I love the way the guys battled defensively too. The Hurricanes got him. Everybody's like, oh, straight up offensive guy. He's got some, grit to his game. He's not a big hitter or anything necessarily, but he's battled really well in the corners and he's bought into the system.
Yeah, and another big one, you mentioned it briefly there with the Stahl brothers all going against each other. Eric Stahl going against his former team way back, captain of that team, and he won a cup with them too. So it's interesting to see how he goes. I mean, obviously not the same type of same player anymore, but he still can be a factor. So I'm going to pick him as an X factor, Eric Stahl, against his former team. So
Gordon would be a good pick too. I mean,
yeah.
He's had his numbers don't show up on the score sheet a ton, but the job he's done in this postseason, shutting down guys like Jack Hughes, Matt Barzal, so on and so forth, you can't understate the impact he's had. Maybe he's another guy that would have been a good pick. Maybe he busts out and has 2, 3, 4 goals in this series. And the Stahl brothers have been known to create magic in the postseason. Eric Stahl, Devils back in 2009. I mean, the list goes on. He had 20-something points the year they won the Cup.
Yeah.
Stahl brothers in conference finals. It happens all the time.
And not for nothing, Stahl does have a goal in these playoffs. So if he can get his chances, he can make some noise.
Yeah. So we'll see who's gonna have the bragging rights after this, because one of them will either two of them will be in the Stanley Cup final or one of them will. So they'll have a Stahl representation in the Stanley Cup final when that happens. With that, who will make it to the Stanley Cup final? So Brandon, predictions. How many games will this series go and who wins it?
Oh, geez, man. I did this last I almost want to go with the Panthers just because I went with the Devils last series and the Hurricanes won so handily. So I'm just going to pretend that they did it just to spite me and go with the Panthers. We were talking about this before we came on. I don't know what to make of this series. I have no idea. But the way the Hurricanes are playing lately, I think they take it in 6. Just my gut feeling. I'm very wrong every step of the way this postseason, so I'm sure it won't happen, but that's my initial gut reaction.
All right, and then a series MVP as well, just to kind of add on to it.
I think it would be a guy like Brent Burns probably, because I do think he's going to be so imperative in them creating offense. If they're going to get it done, I think he's going to be a big reason why.
All right, Joey, prediction: who's going to win it? How many games, and then a series MVP?
Oh boy, just like the last two series I really, really hope I get proven wrong. But I've watched before the season even started, I had the Canes winning the Stanley Cup. And the way I see it is they have faced adversity all season, losing Svechnikov, losing Pacioretty. I know he didn't have a huge impact, but losing Pacioretty, losing Teravainen for a brief moment in time. And they looked at a bunch of teams that play pretty tough and against a team that beat this high-octane Rangers team and pretty much laughed at them. So because of how well they've handled adversity all season long, I hate to say it, I'm going to have to take the Canes in 6. I hope I'm wrong. As a Panthers fan, I hope I'm wrong. And for series MVP, you can't really take too much away from Sebastian Aho, so I think he's going to win it. And I like to do this where I like to pick one from each team. If the Panthers somehow find a way to pull it out, I think the series MVP is going to be Bobrovsky again.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I'm going to go, and I've been pretty good with whenever I say 7, except for the last one. Anytime with the Florida Panthers, I can't seem to get it right. But I'm going to say, I think the Hurricanes get this out. I'll go Hurricanes in 7. I think it's going to be a 7-game series. Series MVP, I go with Seth Jarvis because I really love how he plays. So I'm going to go with Jarvis as being a series MVP. And if the Panthers do end up winning it, I think it will go 7 as well. If the Panthers go, and I'll go Matthew Tkachuk. I think he's going to have a pretty good series as well in this one. He's going to have to, I think, for them to win anyway. And
you loved Jarvis for a while because I remember coming on these last year, and when I mentioned him, you were like, "Oh, I love him." We did this last week.
If you watch any coverage of the 2021 draft is when he was drafted, or 2020?
2020,
yeah. Because anytime you see him 2020, watch any video, anything. I think I wrote his prospect profile actually. So yeah, I've always loved how he plays. So
he's a super nice guy too. I had him on my podcast a few months back, and he's like the nicest, funny. He's just a little kid. Like I don't know, very relatable, like normal kid. He's just very funny and fun to talk to.
Yeah. Well, I like undersized guys that aren't expected to do well. And they're I mean, he's just such a good player. So Seth Jarvis, always gonna be a favorite of mine. So all right. Well, that's another preview show here. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Joey, for coming on another one. We'll see who's up left, the last man standing, actually. Once we get Stanley Cup final in the East, we'll see who's going to be on the Stanley Cup final preview. So stay tuned to that. And Brandon, where can everyone find your stuff, and give us a Twitter handle here?
Yeah, I'm obviously on the Hockey Writers. You can find me at BWStanley26. Check out my podcast too. It's called Tracking the Storm, at TTS_pod on Twitter. We post once a week, really. I'm too busy to do any more than that, unfortunately.
All right, there you
go.
Fun
stuff on there, interviews and stuff.
Nice.
So check it out.
And then Joey, same thing, Twitter handle, and I mean, obviously the Hockey Writers, where you can find your stuff. At anything else you want to kind of plug?
If you ever want to hit me up and talk Panthers hockey, I'm on Twitter at Mr_Joester. I post at least one article per week. I unfortunately don't have a podcast, but if you want to read my stuff, I'm more than happy to have you read my stuff.
There you go. All right. Well, check out thehockeywriters.com for all the coverage for the playoffs as we keep going here up into the Stanley Cup final. It's been some surprising things happening. We got this series, and the Panthers weren't expected to be here. The Hurricanes, I mean, they were expected probably to be around this time because they were second in the conference. So obviously they're a good team. And were they second or first? No, second, because Boston.
They were second.
They were second.
It was second in the league. I think it was Boston, Carolina, right?
Yeah, that's right. So the Hurricanes, not really surprised they're here. And then in the West, we've got some crazy stuff happening. I could have an expansion team in the final and in the Western Conference final. So gonna be fun. We'll see how all this all plays out. Hopefully this series is a fun series to watch and it's not just a whole bunch of defensive hockey, but we will see. So stay tuned, HockeyWriters.com YouTube channel, and make sure you're following us on Twitter as well at the Hockey Writers. That's everything. So make sure you're watching this series because I think it's going to be a good one. And we'll see you next time on another series preview show.